What's up, my friends? It is a great day. It is a nice sunny day. We're supposed to get some snow, I think, later on tonight, so it is the perfect time to start working on the Jeep. It is a sad day too, though. The one thing the Liberty cannot handle is being overheated. We had a cracked overflow bottle, and I have some young ladies that drive the Jeep, and when the temperature gauge is into the ketchup, and I mean not a little bit, like the spicy ketchup, all the way pegged, they think I can make it a few more blocks home. So I think we've got blown head gaskets. I'm hoping that's all it is. I'm hoping it is not a cracked head or a cracked block, because then we are into this a little bit more. So I have some head gaskets. Most of these gaskets are reusable on this, other than the exhaust manifold and the head gaskets. We'll see how it goes. This is a 3.7 liter V6. This isn't the diesel, the 4-cylinder, or whatever. I don't know what the other engines are. This is the 3.7. This has actually been a very good engine. The original owners had a problem. I think it dropped a valve and blew up the engine. They replaced the engine somewhere around 110,000, 120,000 miles, I think. And then another 40,000 miles later, dropped the valve again, damaging the engine. I was able to find some good used cylinder heads off of one of the online sites. That's the heads that are on here now. They're off of a later model. They're not exactly for this engine, but they did fit. I had to make a custom block-off plate for the EGR. This time around, if these are no good, we'll probably just end up getting a rebuilt set of heads on here. So let's tear into it. All right, so first thing we're gonna do, we're gonna pull the battery, pull the intake, pull the air box. All that stuff comes off. We're gonna have to drain the coolant. We'll probably leave the oil in there. Once we put it all back together, run it for a bit to get it hot, and then change the oil. Once all that is done, put some other oil in there, run it for a few hundred miles, and then put a good set of oil in there. So 200,000 miles on it. I'm debating on whether I should replace the timing chain, all the tensioners. I probably should. It's about time, but at the same time, it's not broken. If it's not broken, should we fix it? Just remove the battery. Air box just as a flathead screwdriver. There's the intake silencer, and this air box just has some rubber grommets on the bottom. Just clip in. So all this just pulls out pretty quick, a couple of screws, and on to the next stuff. My spring clamp tool broke, so I had to fix that. I got out my grip mats, which were covered in grease. So I got those mostly cleaned up. Belt is pulled. To pull the belt, there's a 15 millimeter combination wrench. To get the belt off, there's a 15 to 15 millimeter wrench to get that off. That's a 13. This is a 12 millimeter, and this alternator is about ready. I should just kind of work it out a little bit. Alternator comes out. If you want to see more in depth on how to do this, there's a video. I have a video where Bikes with Turlo actually replaced this alternator. What are we doing next? I did drain the coolant just by pulling the lower radiator hose. We'll pull. There's 2 bolts, 8 millimeter, to take off the thermostat housing. I'll pull this upper radiator hose, and then I'll be working on the intake and a lot of this stuff up here. I believe this air compressor, we can unbolt it and set that to the side so we don't have to drain the refrigerant in there. All right, I think I've got everything out of this AC compressor. I think this is just gonna wiggle its way out. Might need a little persuasion, a little gentle persuasion. Where's my big pry bar? There we go. And I believe I'm just kind of swing this over to the side, and that will be perfectly in the way when we start doing the exhaust manifold, which is the most difficult part of this whole job. And then this one here has the safety clip broken. That just comes out. We got all that unplugged, So we got this doing pretty good here. Oh. There we go. That one out. This one comes unplugged here, like that. This one's gonna come unplugged from there. And we got all that out of the way. This is gonna come off. This is the vacuum hose for the brake booster. That's gonna come off. Swing that out of the way. PCV valve, that comes off there. And I think this twists. This goes on somehow. It might be better just to pull this whole filler neck off. Well, I think we're just pulling the whole thing off. Trying to get this off. I got 2 of the bolts out. I was using a wrench, I dropped it, and it has disappeared. Look at those clouds. That's what's coming in. Well, I took out a few bolts, got the fuel rail out. I say I wrapped it up just in time. Hail coming down quite a bit. All right, we're several days later. This is where I'm at. I did get the harmonic balancer off and crank pulley using this pulley puller. I had a hard time getting it on there, so I bought this one, a smaller one. I couldn't get that one to work at all, but finally got it off. And I think next is going to be timing chain covers got to come off. All the bolts got all the bolts loose. There's just a few of them left. The water pump's off. The exhaust manifold. The exhaust manifold's down here. So how much coolant do you think just went into the oil pan pulling this timing chain cover off? My guess is more than I would like to have. Timing chain covers off, valve covers are now off, and for some reason Jeep did a very good job at making these wire harnesses just short enough so that you gotta pull like crazy to get the valve covers out from under them. They are really tight. I'm gonna try leaving the exhaust manifolds in when I pull these heads off. I think it'll be okay. With the exhaust manifolds left in and loose, it's still bolted. The V-band clamp down low is still bolted, but with that hanging down like that, I don't have to pull the steering column out. I don't know what idiot put this bolt in last, but boy, that was tight. Oh, wait a minute, it was me. Being on here and trying to do this with one hand, hoping this doesn't go flying. Oh, there we go. Yep, if I remember right, I want to try to get the pry bar, compress this, and put a, I think I used a hex key last time to hold that back. Pried the tensioner back, put the hex key in. There's a crack here. I don't remember if there's a crack there. There may have been a crack there last time when I put this in. I have had a lot of stuff fall against the radiator now, and once again, I know that happened last time. Hopefully I have not introduced some new holes in the radiator. I'm taking the bolts off. There's 2 smaller ones here. There's also 2 down in here. Don't forget to take those out. You can see the 2 of them. And then you've got 8 of these bigger ones here. And once those are all loose and or out, this should be ready to come off. Oh yeah, there's also you've got a cam position sensor down here. So make sure you unplug that. Pull out all the bolts. So this should come out pretty easy now. I think there's a ground on the back of this head too. So we'll pull this out and then I should be able to unbolt that. I think, oh, this still feels like it's stuck on something. Oh, there we go. Just gotta take this ground out here. You can see this is a O2. It originally did not come with an EGR valve. These heads came off of a newer model that did have an EGR valve. So I had to make a custom EGR valve block-off plate for the left-hand side. Hopefully I don't drop it. All right. Oh, it doesn't look too bad. There is the cylinders. They don't look too bad. They actually look pretty good. You can see this when we got it. The valve seat fell out of the number 1 cylinder, and the valve had hit the piston and made a mark on it. That's been there for a couple of years now, and I think around 50 or 60,000 miles. But the pistons look pretty good. I just wiped them off. The carbon buildup pretty much wipes off. I'm looking at the head gasket. I don't see any obvious signs of problems on this side, so we'll take the left side off next, and hopefully there's an issue there. Also want to clean up the block and the heads and look for any cracks. This coloration right here, that may have been from some water sitting in there and rusting it a bit. But like I said, it's gone about 60,000 miles since the last time I took it apart. And here's the one in the back. You can actually see the hone marks on there. There's a few vertical scratches, but for the most part, that doesn't look too bad. There is just a little bit of ridge at the top. Those all look pretty good too. That one looks like it's a little bit cleaner than the other ones. I don't really see any evidence of a blown head gasket. I hope we're not looking at a cracked head now. I found out when you severely overheat a 3.7, it causes a lot of damage to the heads. The valve guides actually warp, the whole head warps.
So the only way to correct all that is to put new valve guides in, new valve seats, new valves, new everything, top to bottom, front to back. So that's what we had to do. I also got to make some new friends at 410 Machine. Check them out on YouTube, Facebook. They actually did a great job getting these heads rebuilt, and they did it quick too.
Before I put this back together, I am going to put some new bushings in, rack bushings. The old ones were very shot. I mean, I drilled these out, but you can actually peel chunks of this off with your fingers. So these were shot. In order to do it, it took me a while. I've been out here for several hours trying to figure this out, but I just took a come along or a ratchet strap, tied it to the block to pull it up enough so I could pound the old bushings out, and then new ones just slip right in. They go in pretty easy. So, but this should definitely help with the steering quite a bit. I did replace the power steering hose, the high pressure power steering hose, which was leaking. This goes in and just loops around right in here. In order to do that, I did have to pull the grill off, the top radiator piece, the headlight out, and then I had to pull this plastic piece back in order to get back there. To do it the right way, you probably need to take this out, and to do that, the bumper's got to come off. So I wasn't going to do all that. I'm going to sand down the surface here. It's pretty flat. I'm not too worried about surfacing it. You just want to be real careful with not dropping anything on the surface or damaging it in any way. I've got this cleaned up pretty good with sandpaper. Just using some sandpaper in my hand. It's not, there's a few spots. I just hope this seals. These are the gaskets I'm using, Felt Pro 26229 PT. This one I actually got at O'Reilly's and paid twice as much as this one that I got off of Amazon. Why one is blue, one is black, I don't know. I'm hoping this is not like a cheap imposter or something put in Felt Pro wrapper. Now these can only go on one way, and I'm already seeing some issues here. Especially like down here. What is up with that? That does not look right. Okay, so comparing to what was on here, I don't like this here. This big gap here, that looks kind of funky. We got a hole hanging off the back, another one there. But comparing it to what was on here, this is exactly what was on here, and it lasted, I don't know, 30, 40,000 miles. So I guess we'll put this on and run with it. When I take this gasket, flip it over, put it on the other side, you actually use this hole and this hole on the other side. So I guess that's right. You torque 1 through 8, which is just the big bolts, to 20 foot-pounds. Torque them to 20 foot-pounds again a second time to make sure they're at 20 foot-pounds. I'm going to torque the smaller bolts here to 10 foot-pounds, and then turn them to 90 degrees and then 90 degrees. I was playing with the torque wrench while I was torquing these. The first time you go around, you're somewhere around 55 to 60 foot-pounds. The second time around, you're somewhere between 70 and 80 foot-pounds. So I can tell you that is about where I ended up on here. And then the last step is to go through, tighten these up to 20 foot-pounds. By the way, before you put these small ones in, these have to have sealant on them or they will leak. So make sure you put some kind of sealant on there. So then we're on to the driver's side. I just hit this with some 180 grit sandpaper to get most of it off. You can see there's still a little bit of pitting in here. The head gasket will probably go around that, so it's not going to be a big deal. But I want to really try to get some of these areas here really cleaned off. Try to get a lot of the old gasket material off of here to get this cleaned up so we get a good seal on the new head gasket. I'm going to work on this a little more. I started with 180 grit, went to 220, and just need to finish this off a little bit and then put the new head on, the other head on. This is for putting a timing chain assembly in, a 3.7. These are all used parts, but I'm using them anyway. The secret is having cable ties. You should have at least 4 cable ties. The first thing you need to do is look at the long chains. You'll notice there's 2 black links on the longer chains, and there's also 2 black links on the shorter ones. Those black links correspond to windows in this sprocket right here. So the first thing is we want to have the dot on this gear pointing up, and the window in the gear is the opposite side of this gear from where the chain goes. So this chain is gonna go on, this chain goes on first, and this is the lower one. So we're gonna have these black links line up in this window here, and this chain's gonna go off in this direction for the right side bank. If you'll notice lining this up, I had problems with lining these up. This is actually a little bit further back, or it's a little too far forward. I did the best I can to line it up. I think that's gonna be okay. This top chain, you're gonna take the two links and they go on either side of the dot. Then we're gonna take some cable ties, tie that together. Then this dot down here goes right on the one black link down at the bottom here. We're gonna cable tie this all together. So when you're done, you got some kind of monstrosity like this. You've got the chain furthest back. This goes to the right side or passenger side of the engine. The next one up is gonna go to the driver's side. And again, I've done the best to line the black links up with the holes here. There seems like they're either a little too far forward or too far back. Then you've got the main timing chain that goes to the crank. The two black links go to that dot there. The one black link at the bottom goes to the dot right there. And again, we've got the cable ties to hold this all together. We should be able to stuff that in the engine now. All right, so I mostly have it on the engine. What I did was I had cable ties. I tied onto the black links on both sides. I took the centerpiece out and put it into the sprocket here. Got this kind of close, pulled this chain through, just tied it onto a hose, pulled this chain through, tied it onto a hose. At the same time, I had to work this kind of back and forth to get it where it needs to go. This dot needs to be straight up. I still don't have the pulley on down here, so I am going to have to pull this whole thing out a little bit to get this on the crank pulley here. The crank, put the sprocket on the crank. So this will just not quite go in there. And every time I drop it, it falls off with a crank pulley. I finally got it in, and you can see the problem I have. I got it in, but the lower chain's out, so it's got to come out again. Okay, after about 10 minutes of trying, I got everything on. I don't know if it's lined up. I know this looks good here. This looks good down at the bottom, so this front chain is lined up. I don't know about these ones here. I can't really check the furthest most one. It looks like these are not lined up at all. So the problem I've got now is the backmost chain, the furthest back one on the block. The passenger side, actually the two dots are actually down here, so it actually needs to slip this way a little bit. Now what I need to do is take this chain on the bottom, give it a little bit of slack so it hangs down. Got a real small screwdriver, so I can try to wedge it in at the top here and try to pick up and I'm just gonna stick it in, try to get a grip on it and pull it ahead one link, and then we'll check it again. I don't know if you can't really see down in there. So I did have to play with this a little bit. I had to take the crank pulley, put it back on to turn the engine a little bit to get this lined up so it's straight up. But right now, everything should be lined up where it needs to go. And we can work on, we're gonna have to put the cam sprockets on. To do that, we're probably gonna have to turn these cams a little bit to get them lined up. You wanna be very careful when you turn these. Not to turn them too quick, because there are some pistons that are up, there are some that are down. You don't want to try to force this cam over, open up a valve into a piston and bend a valve after you just had the heads rebuilt. So we're going to carefully try to align the cams next. After quite a bit of fiddling, I ended up pulling this out. Was able to get that pulley lined up pretty easily then. And then the problem became trying to put this back in. There's a tensioner here you've got to push up on. I had to use a screwdriver. I use a flathead screwdriver, small one, to kind of pry up on that tensioner so I could wedge this back in there. But now that is in, and then I tighten up all the bolts to hold the tensioners and the slide, I don't know what other tracks are in. So the Left side is now done. Hopefully it's lined up still. I did put the crank pulley on so I could adjust this a little bit just to get that lined up. And now we're gonna go. Most people I've seen do the right side first, so maybe I should have started there. But that one is gonna be next. So when you're resetting this, there's this one here. Just gonna pop that back. And we can push down on this. And it takes some effort. This would be better. Turn back on that. Pop it down in there. We should be able to put this. There we go. Just like that. Now that that is all in, we should be able to pull this pin here and put tension on there, just like that. We'll take that and put it back in place, put the bolts in. Timing chains are in, lined up. We should be able to pull this pin, put tension on there. This is not an easy job, and what really worries me is I put all this in, the chain is still off, so I still got to fix that again. And I'm not 100% sure that this is lined up right, so we'll spin this over by hand and see where we're at very carefully. Mostly because if I have a piston hit a valve, I like it to be very softly and not slam it in by the starter. But this one up here, you see there's a dot. Left side lines up with a dot. This side there's a dot, R for right, and there's a white dot there. So that's how those line up. So let's give this a spin and see where we're at. I was able to take a screwdriver, just pop that back on. I did put this bolt on because the last thing I want to do is take this for a spin, have this come out, and the whole thing come apart. I'm going to torque these cam bolts. I believe these are tight. I need to torque this. This can obviously just come right off. It needs to come off anyway. So I am going to torque everything. I'm not going to record that, but just so you know, that is something that's important to do. The best part of all this is you are now smarter than I am because you know everything I know about doing timing chains on a 3.7, and you knew everything you knew before we started. So you are now smarter than me. As our torque spark plugs are in, I hate doing this. I really would like to clean this up, make it look like new, but my pressure washer is broken. I'm almost out of brake cleaner. I'm running out of time, and there's a huge storm coming. So I'd like to get this on so the RTV has some time to set and get this sealed. Here, I was trying to find a bolt to go in there, but there's no threads in there, so that's supposed to be open like that. But in the meantime, I dropped a bolt into the oil pan, and I got a huge storm coming. So I had to find a magnet. Going back together, I can say nicely, I got the bolt down here on the exhaust. The clamp I got to tighten up, but the right side is mostly complete. Just sitting here thinking, these manifolds are kind of a pain. It's hard to hold the gasket in place, put the bolts in, get it all lined up, tighten everything up. I'm kind of thinking on this bottom of this gasket, cut these out so it's slotted. I can put the 3 bottom bolts in and then just slide this right in and put the top ones in. Here's what I got going. I just cut a little slot on the bottom of each of these. I'm gonna try to slip this in. See if that works. Leave a comment if you thought of this before, if I stole your idea, if this is a good idea, if it's not gonna work, if it's not gonna seal up right. I don't know, let me know. Exhaust manifold's almost in. That actually, cutting the slots in the exhaust manifold gasket actually worked really good. It slid right in. It was a way to do it. Coils are pretty easy. Putting the spark plugs in, surprisingly. Oh, it's warm out here. However, got the exhaust manifold on. I still gotta do that clamp down there on both sides. Coil, got the coils in. Just plug these back in. It's there. Plug that last one in there. Yes! Finally got it back together. I do have a pile of greasy tools in here. I am out of power steering fluid. So there's only a little bit in there and mostly water in the cooling system because I'm not trusting that it's not gonna leak. I'm not gonna have a few leaks, but let's see if this is gonna start. It's not gonna start because the battery's dead. All right, got the battery charged up a little bit, and let's see, I'm gonna turn the key, cycle it on and off about 4 times. The idea is this has been sitting with the fuel system open for a while. I want to try to charge the fuel system as much as possible. Kind of a weird noise. Let's see if that helps at all. Well, it's trying. No, not enough charge still. I'm really getting tired of this. I'll put the battery, charge it up for about 10 minutes with jumper cables on the car. This is the third time now. It really sounds like either the timing is off, like the timing chains aren't aligned properly, or there's something unplugged. Something important somewhere. So before I connect the battery, I am gonna take another look around the engine compartment. I should have done it while I was charging, I guess, but I'm gonna take another quick look around. This is a rookie mistake here. On the right side cylinder bank, there's a cam position sensor. Very important to the ignition system. The ignition will probably not fire without that plugged in. Okay, unfortunately, I don't have a lot of coolant. I put some mostly water in, and I am out of power steering fluid. I had just a tiny bit left, so it's way low. So if this does fire, I'm gonna let it run for a couple seconds and then shut it off. So let's see if that was it. Should the fuel pump, fuel lines, injector should be plenty charged by now, since I've cycled the key probably a dozen times. Oh, there we go. Starts right up. Sounds really good. Man, it sounds good. It is smooth. Yes! Yes! Did it! Yes! Yes! Just topped off the coolant. This is what I'm using, the O'Reilly's Universal Yellow. Let me know what you think in the comments. If that's what everyone else uses or not, if it'll work or not. This is what was in there. This is what I've used before. So this is what I'm going to use. I don't know if it's the right stuff or not, but it hasn't really had an issue yet. I did spill a lot putting it in. I also topped off the power steering fluid, so that is now full. This engine is roughly, try to get this cap on. Why is this so difficult? This engine is about a quart, actually about 2 quarts low on oil right now. I do have a quart I could put in there, but it is also due for an oil change. So I'm kind of thinking, I'm here, I might as well just change the oil. The skid plate's still off, so all of that's easily accessible. I wanted to run it a little bit, but having the engine open, I flushed a whole bunch of stuff down into the pan. So I'd like to get that out as soon as possible. I've got some cheap O'Reilly's synthetic oil I'm gonna put in there, and then run it for probably about 1,000 miles, and then probably swap it out for some Royal Purple. Happy day, we're not done yet. We got a bit of a kind of rattling, clanking noise coming from the front of the engine area. In addition to that, we only rev up to about 5,000 RPM, and then from 5,000 to 6,000, it took forever. It would get there eventually, but I'm guessing that probably when I did the timing chain, that those 2 links that are marked in the window are either forward or back. Wherever I put them is probably the wrong spot. That's probably why it's not revving up as high as I would like, because of the cam timing, so I need to adjust that. The rattling noise kind of sounds like the timing chain. This timing chain has 200,000 miles. Timing chain, tensioners, all this stuff is made up with kind of junkyard parts, used parts I found lying around and picked up from various places, various other engines. So might be time to replace that. I probably should have done it last time, but everything looked okay. I thought it'd run all right, but maybe not. So I'm going to start by pulling the driver's side valve cover. I can check the timing chain there. I really don't want to take this whole engine apart again, but it looks like I'm going to have to. I've rotated this engine over multiple times, trying to get all the timing marks to line up on the camshafts, and it is not working out. So what I've done is I've got it close. The crank is on top dead center, and if you look at this cam over here, this cam looks good, except this timing mark should line up here. I'm not, so I think this is off by 1 tooth is what it looks like. This side over here on the left side, this cam looks like it's rotated this way 1 tooth, and the timing mark looks like it's, if you look at it, that timing mark should line up with this dot right here. So that looks like it's off 2 teeth. So I'm gonna try to adjust these. I'm gonna try to realign all this up again. So I was thinking if I pull the cam sprocket off,
adjust the cams, although that's going to be real difficult without being able to get to the tensioners, the chain tensioners. It's probably doable with some pry bars to get in there and get it adjusted, but if the timing chain is off a little bit and the marks are off, and now I align the cam to the marks on the chain, but the chain is off, we could end up with other issues. And I think at this point, with everything being just a little bit off, and I'm not 100% confident the chain that goes on the center sprocket, I'm not 100% confident that that is right on the money. So at this point, I think it's going to be best to pull all the stuff off the front of the engine and go through all the timing chain process again to make sure we're all lined up square, but because we're definitely a little bit off right now. And this side, the left side, looks like it's off about 1 tooth. And I can't guarantee that everything's right without being able to see what's behind there, which sucks because I'm pulling the whole front of the engine apart again, including the crank pulley, which I hate doing, but I think at this point it's the best way to just ensure everything is right on the money. Well, here we are. All that's left is the crank pulley, then about 6, maybe 8 bolts to get the timing chain cover off. That's not bad for only 45 minutes worth of work, but seeing as how I've done it many times now, maybe I should have done it faster. I don't know. But I was able to take the engine apart pretty quick and order a timing chain. The weird noise from the front of the engine was one of the timing chain tensioners had broken, which I probably should have replaced last time I did the engine, but I did not. In the process of waiting for the timing chain set to arrive, somebody accidentally turned over the engine with no timing chain on it and completely gacked the valves, the intake valves. There was definitely some valve to piston damage, and this is what a valve looks like that has contacted a piston. But I went back to my friends at 410 Machine that got the heads done. I think it was less than a week they had it done and back in my hand so I could get this put back together and get it back on the road finally. Hopefully for the last time. Chain in, I got too many hands, I can't film it, but you gotta slip it in a little bit, make sure everything's lined up. This point's gotta go up. There is a little dot right back here that's gotta point down on this. I think it's a counterbalance shaft or some oil pump, I don't know, something. I'm just gonna check it again. I wanna make sure that's lined up at the top with these two. One at the bottom. There should be a dot at the bottom that lines up with that one. And then these camshaft ones, I can really only see the one in the front, and it looks like that is still lined up. This one over here is in the back, you can't really see it. So I think we're pretty much lined up now. We can put the new cam sprockets on, then start working on all the tensioners. The only guide I have is just this one here, and I took it off, took it on with that one in, so I just changed it, swapped it out with a new one. Now when you're doing the timing, this cam on the passenger side is very precariously perched. You can see this cam lobe right here, it is right at the top. Right, it is sitting right on the tip. It's sitting right on the tip of this, right on the roller. So you got two round surfaces right next to each other. You bump this just a little bit and it's gonna snap one way or the other. So it is very precarious. I think I got this in. I did have to move the crank, put the crank pulley on. I'm able to turn this with my hand just a little bit just to get this lined up. I should add, I'm doing this on my own car, so I'm using some vice grips. If I was doing this on someone else's car and wanted to be very careful, I would wrap a rag around this. In fact, I have one right there. I should have just put it on there. But I would wrap a rag around this when you grip this so you don't do any damage to the cams. Okay, so I've got these in. These are not torqued, they're not tight. Well, I did put a wrench on that one and snug it down. This one's only finger tight here. Okay, those are not tight. I don't want to tighten those up until I get all the guides in. Another guide there that needs to go in. I don't want to tighten it until they're in because I may need to loosen this or adjust it, because we're going to need tension or slack in a chain to get the guides in. And then there's the tensioners, chain tensioners to go in there too. So fortunately, this wasn't too hard to figure out. The longer one goes on the top. I put the shorter one in first and it would have only been held in by about 3 or 4 threads. So that definitely can't be right. So that was not too hard to get figured out. Again, I put it in. Bolts are only hand tight. I'm gonna put all this together, keep everything hand tight,
until I know we're good. Chain's in, you'll see there's still a lot of slack. The chain tensioners are going to go. There's one that goes under here, one that's going to go under here. So there's some slack in this one. I'll probably need to pick that up to put it in there, and then probably need to adjust this a little bit to give me enough slack to put the other one in. Okay, so this is what a timing chain tensioner looks like. I'm going to keep this surface clean. There's no gaskets that go in there or anything. This just bolts on there tight. I think the oil comes in here, which provides pressure on this. More RPMs, more pressure, the more pressure is going to be on this pushing up to tighten the chain. Moment of truth. I'm going to pull this one. I'll pull this one first. That's pretty tough. This one's next. I went to turn this over a little bit and found there's tension in the chains. I was really worried if I turn it over that we're gonna skip a tooth because there's so much tension. So I just turned it maybe a quarter of a turn left and right, clockwise, counterclockwise. Here we go, next one. And the last one. Ooh. There we go. This is the kit I'm using, Chloe's 90393SA. And you might be asking, why wouldn't you just put that in the first place, the first time you did the whole engine? And the reason is that kit costs almost as much as the original purchase price of this Jeep. All right, let's see if this is gonna start this time. Ooh, yeah, fires right up. Yeah, no problem.
And that puts the end to another chapter of the life of the Jeep Liberty. It is still going strong today. The engine's running great, and we are ready for winter to take on some snow next.